Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the Safe Place Selfie discussion and the tutorial on how to participate with Safe Place Selfie Day, which, oh, by the way, is tomorrow, April 6th. And I'm here to talk about Safe Place Selfie, describe how you can participate yourself, how you can participate as an organization, especially if you're a Weather Ready Nation ambassador, and also to really, engage others and challenge others. And what we're trying to do with Safe Place Selfie is really get everyone in all communities aware of their hazards in their area and able to identify where their safe place is, where their safe place isn't. So my name is Doug Hilderbrand. I am the Preparedness and Resilience Program Lead in the National Weather Service at the National Weather Service headquarters. And we're going to spend a few minutes to really dive deeper into what Safe Place Selfie is all about. And we'll answer any questions that people have. And hopefully after 25, 30 minutes, you'll have a better understanding of how we can all participate in this fun, free, and educational social media campaign. So as I mentioned, Safe Place Selfie, using the hashtag Safe Place Selfie, is primarily on the Twitter platform, but from the National Weather Service perspective, we'll also be pushing on Facebook, Instagram, and if you have other social media platforms that you're on, by all means, just use the hashtag SafePlaceSelfie to represent your area and your organization. And so what we're talking about is the call to action to do three things. One, pick a hazard. And this year we're really stressing any hazard. It can be the typical tornado or severe weather safe place, but it can be any hazard. We're really looking at wildfires and even rip currents and beach safety, flooding, lightning. There's a lot of misunderstanding of your safe place when it comes to lightning. Heat, extreme cold, and recently in the news, snow squalls. So pick a hazard. That's number one. Number two, spend some time, and this is, I think, the most important piece, spend some time looking around, thinking about different scenarios and where your safe place is when that weather hazard threatens. It could be obvious, like a basement or a designated safe room or storm shelter for a tornado. Or it could be less obvious, like thinking about what would happen if you're in your car and severe weather strikes. Like, do you stay in your car, or do you try to find a low area or protected area outside? These are tough questions that we'll get to in this half hour. And the third thing that we ask you to do, besides identifying your safe place, is share this experience, motivate others, take your selfie, post it on social media, and you can even, if you're bold enough, challenge others, challenge a friend or a family member, challenge a coworker, or even a rival TV station. You can really make an impact and sort of going, taking a look at why we came up with this title, Saving Lives One Selfie at a Time, is your selfie could impact someone else to do the same and find their safe place. And instead of reading about, a tragic experience where someone was in the wrong place at the wrong time, what if they were in the right place at the wrong time? Meaning they were able to survive. They were able to weather the storm. They were able to walk away. And, in the news over the last few weeks with several episodes of extreme weather, we've seen survivor stories where people have huddled in an interior room That was the difference between, tragedy and walking away with your life. It's those subtle decisions that if you can do it ahead of time and you can practice it, that's what the Safe Place Selfie call to action is. Your practice makes improvement. You'll have less hesitation when the real deal presents itself. And I'd be remiss to not mention, yes, this is a social media campaign. We want people, engaging, using their smartphones and all of that. But a big part of this is how can we reach those who are a little bit more isolated, more vulnerable, underserved, may not have access to social media, may not have access to a smartphone. And how do we reach them? How can we engage them? So the underlying effort in all of this is trying to make those connections, make the people who are isolated not isolated, reach out, to grandmom or a friend who, isn't in the mainstream, and that's okay. Let's reach them. Let's ask that question. No longer should it be, oh, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's not acceptable in this day and age where we have the incredible advances in meteorology and weather prediction and identifying, moments where your life is in danger, that we can take that empowerment of information and, reduce the impacts of extreme weather. So we have our three things, right? Pick a hazard, identify your safe place, and then post it, challenging others, using the hashtag #SafePlaceSelfie. And then, start being creative. Use your imagination, use your creativity. You can pick several hazards. You can even pick a multi-hazard event, right? Mother Nature throws lots of curveballs at us. We've seen that with, the remnants of Ida with severe weather on top of flooding. We see that in the Central Plains often, where you're not dealing with just one hazard, but two. Think through, where is the safest place? Is there a safe location that addresses both hazards? Or is it something where you really have to triage, what's the most imminent danger, right? What am I facing first? Let's take a look at that, and then let's course correct if that hazard, subsides and a new one picks up, sort of the tornado and flooding event again. Whatever you can do to stay safe, that most critical, most essential preparedness action or protective action is that location where you choose to be. All right. Eric, if you could pull up the what I like to call the crib notes or the cheat sheet on various hazards and real brief descriptions of safe places, right? So obviously with extreme cold, you want to be indoors, right? Heat on. And if everything's going well, that's an easy solution to extreme cold. But what happens when your power's out? What happens when you need the generator, or you're tempted to use, candles or your stove or your oven as a heating source, where now that extreme cold is creating unsafe scenarios with trying to stay warm. And then extreme heat, we're coming up into the summer months. I can tell you from my personal story, in 1999, July 4th weekend, I had certainly heat exhaustion, if not, a level of heat stroke where I was, foolish enough not to go to the hospital, but I was down and out for about 2 days, and it was scary at times what my body was doing in response to 115 degree heat index. Flash flooding, oftentimes where you are is the best place to be, right? Flash flooding often is very dangerous when you're traveling, especially if you're driving on roadways. But there are times where your location, your home, may even be in danger of catastrophic flooding. So you got to have an escape route. But again, the majority of times with flash flooding, it's not traveling, staying put. That is your best option there. And then I mentioned lightning. How many people, and I'll be honest, I've been one of those people in the past that, will sit on their porch or they open up their garage door and they feel a sense of security because, you have a roof over top of you. But as long as you have that sort of opening to the outside, a nearby lightning strike can get you and can strike you. And we see this time and again with people who, are kind of halfway taking, when thunder roars go indoors, they're not really indoors. And then also, where we mentioned vehicles can be very unsafe places for a variety of storm or variety of hazards. But lightning and vehicles are particularly good when it comes to the lightning threat. A hard top, windows up, doors closed environment can give you protection from a lightning strike, and we see this where even airplanes can often be struck by lightning and are completely safe because of that metal shell that the lightning travels around. Wind, we're seeing that this week in the sort of the mountain west with very strong winds. You don't even need a storm associated with wind. It could be a very clear day, but real gusty winds, especially if there's a low pressure system deepening nearby. Those winds can be drawn in, and we've had experiences here in Washington D.C. over the last several years where trees have come down, very dangerous situations, but not necessarily associated with a thunderstorm or other type of storm. Tornadoes, of course, get the most attention, especially in the springtime here, and that's why we hold Safe Place Selfie Day in early April, because it really is a period where tornado activity does ramp up through most parts of the country, and we can say immediately get to shelter, but for a lot of people that's a tough question. Where is their shelter? Is it in their home? Is it in a public tornado shelter? How much time do they have to get to that shelter? I'm lucky enough, my family is lucky enough that, when a tornado warning is issued, it takes us about, 30 to 60 seconds to walk from, the top floor, if we're in our bedrooms, down to the basement. And we have an interior room without any windows that we can huddle under. That's our safe place. But for some, if you're living in a mobile home or a manufactured home, you need to get out of that area, that home of yours, and you need to find a neighbor or a public tornado shelter. And it takes, in some cases, a long time, and oftentimes it's even longer than the tornado warning. So you need 15, 30 minutes. That's when you really need to be paying attention to the information at hand and make those decisions ahead of time so that you're not caught in between getting to adequate shelter. And then tsunamis, though they don't really have a season, they can happen, any time during the year. The two things you need to know about tsunamis is if you feel the earth shaking and you're along the coast, you want to get inland and you want to get up. And so, if it's possible, to get outside and to head inland, look around beforehand. If you're, traveling, let's say around the Pacific Ocean basin, take a little bit of time, look for tsunami evacuation routes, look for the main, thoroughfare to get out of that coastal area. And if that's not a possibility, you want to make sure that you get to a tall building, a hotel, that type of thing, and get upward. So, here's your crib notes. Share this with others. It's available to download on weather.gov/WRN. You'll see our Safe Place Selfie article there, and that you can pull up all of this information, and really start thinking ahead of time, where is your safe place? So let's stop to see if anyone has questions. I know I've been sort of giving the fire hose of information on Safe Place Selfie, and if there are some good questions out there, we can certainly have a discussion. I have a few scenarios. One I've highlighted before is for a tornado. Most people have heard, the worst place you can be is in a vehicle. And I would argue that, yes, it's a bad place to be. But in previous, for decades, the rule of thumb is get out of the vehicle, find a low-lying area. And certainly if there is a unique situation where there is a good, protected area, getting out of the vehicle is probably your best option. But today's cars are a little bit different than in the past. The safety systems, the airbags, what protects you in an automobile crash can protect you with, incredible winds. Certainly, the higher the EF rating of a tornado, the risk skyrockets. But if you made the choice of staying in your vehicle, you are provided some protection. One of the things I've learned in sort of diving deeper into this issue is, and I didn't know this at the time, but automobiles are designed that if your car or your vehicle is not turned on, the airbags won't go off. So one of the things you want to do is turn your car on. That activates all of the protective systems. Obviously, put your seatbelt on, and if you can, somehow, whether it's a bike helmet or some sort of protection, crouching down, shy of getting, the vehicle airborne, you'll have some protection. Going outside into the elements, sort of being exposed to debris, even if you're, in a low-lying area, again, you're taking your chances. And then, of course, if you're, trying to escape into a culvert or some sort of, drainage area, now you have the risk of even minor flash flooding could pose a serious threat to life. The other, interesting protective action, in changing gears a little bit with lightning, is for a long time, the guidance, sort of the last ditch protective action is the lightning crouch. We had a name for it, where you kind of put your knees to your chest and you crouch down to get low. And the evidence that really works is minimal. Yes, you're reducing your height. Maybe you're not the tallest object, but the one thing that you're doing when you get in your lightning crouch is you're staying in the risk area, right? Because you're not moving. And really, what you want, your fundamental protective action, your safe place, is to get to that safe place, is to get to shelter, and it is to get out of the danger area. And so it's not an optimal scenario, but if you're choosing between, getting in a lightning crouch and just running as fast as you can, or somehow doing your very best to get to shelter, you're better off getting out of that hazard than remaining in that hazard. Again, somewhat of a false sense of security that because you're in a lightning crouch, you're somehow protected from a lightning strike. I'll pause again. Hopefully we'll have some questions. If not, we can keep this short, and hopefully you've learned something over the last 20 minutes, and that this encourages you to participate in the Safe Place Selfie Day on April 6th. I like to view it as almost it's our preparedness national holiday. It's one day where we're asking people to do one of the most essential preparedness actions, and that is to know where their safe place is. So anyone brave, anyone want to, try to stump me with a scenario where they may not know where their safe place is? Eric, any takers there? All right, well, we can wrap up. Oh, yep, feel free to ask. I'll certainly do my very best to answer. And if there aren't any questions, then maybe, maybe all of this is clear, and that's a good thing. We're really trying to find new ways to engage the public. What I love about Safe Place Selfie Day, and it's my favorite campaign of the year, is we are capturing preparedness actions, right? By taking that selfie, it's not watching a video or reading a one-pager. It's doing it, having that exercise, getting the family involved, getting the family pets involved. You can be creative, you can be fun, and the idea is, if you have a really good experience with Safe Place Selfie, and it's kind of a bonding moment with the family, it leads to greater preparedness. Focus next maybe on your emergency kit. A lot of the items that you need for an emergency kit are just items, sort of haphazardly located around the house. Oftentimes you don't have to spend a lot of money creating that emergency kit, but it takes a little bit of thought and a little bit of effort. The other thing that you can do is create, and then there are great templates and things that documents you can print out and fill out. Have a family communications plan. And what I mean by family is, it could be your immediate family, it could be distant family, making sure that you have a way to communicate, that you're okay, sort of the check-in. It could be, neighbors or those who are, most vulnerable, that you want to make sure are prepared. And so have that family communications plan. The kids may be at school, and mom and dad may be, in different locations for work, and you're all scattered about. Make sure you're using text instead of making a phone call, because that text is likely to get through. I see one question here. Thanks, John, for submitting it. Just an observation. I think it's less about the NWS providing accurate information, but about the public actually paying attention to it, such as with dangerous weather, last week's snow squall, for example. I worry that the public does not pay careful attention to weather alerts. That's sort of my job there, John, and I couldn't agree with you more. The best metaphor I can use, or the way I like to think about sort of my job in preparedness and resilience, is I'm a broccoli salesman, right? Everyone knows broccoli's good for you, but it's got to be, flavored up. You got to have a little sea salt and a little olive oil, and you got to, blacken the edges of it. That sounds delicious to me. But if we're selling boiled, soft broccoli, people aren't going to eat it, even though they know it's good for you. Preparedness is good for you. Taking the time to ensure your safety, what could be more important? For this day and age, with information overload and distractions and everyone bombarding everybody else with the most important things you need to know, this often can get washed out. And so I agree with you, whether it's through outreach and education, whether it's through technology, and utilizing, social media. People are quick to highlight all of the challenges with social media and the sort of the collateral damage it can cause, but it also can be used for good. It can also be used to save lives and to reach people that may not be paying attention. They're paying attention to their Grammy feed, right, of award season, but maybe there's a safe place selfie tweet that they come across and they start thinking, maybe I should be paying attention. I know recently with the snow squalls, a lot of people don't really know what a snow squall is. Yeah, they know it's, kind of a burst of snow, but the dangers of traveling and specifically driving in a snow squall, there are not many other weather hazards that are as dangerous as driving where your road conditions are rapidly deteriorating and your visibility is dropping quickly. So you're blind and you're unable to stop. That is a horrifying situation where your safe place is, identifying beforehand, is today a snow squall day? And I know the tragedy that occurred last week, it was a snow squall day where snow squalls were possible. And so ahead of time, at the very least, you want to make sure that you're, driving, under control at a slower speed, and you're very quick to identify, hey, wait a minute, I can't see, I'm starting to see some decreases in the visibility, and the best protective action in that situation is to safely pull over or get off a highway or find a place where you aren't traveling and you're able to avoid the entire situation. Because once you get in the situation, your chances or your options are not that good of what to do. Steve, if you're traveling cross country, what is the best way to be notified of something like a snow squall if you are not familiar with the area you were driving through? Great question. And, it's certainly, any long distance, road trip, you can't just be paying attention to the conditions where you're starting and the conditions where you're wanting to go. But you've got to, take a look at the overall, conditions of your entire route. And it may be that you need to modify that route of where you're going. Maybe taking a more eastern or more southern track, even if it's, 30 minutes longer, you may actually get there sooner because you're avoiding a weather hazard. And it's for snow squalls or any kind of weather hazard that impacts road driving. We do have wireless emergency alerts, and there's a lot of nuance in messaging with getting a pop-up message on your phone while driving, right? Hopefully, people are familiar with wireless emergency alerts, that they recognize the chirp, the sound that it makes, that, they know to keep their phone audio on so that chirp will occur. And snow squalls are in the list of hazards that, when you enter an area that is under a snow squall warning, you will get that alert. But there's, if you're entering an area and you're just sort of on autopilot, you're not really aware of the dangers around you when it comes to the weather. What we would like to do, what I would like to do in building a weather ready nation is how can we integrate the weather warnings and the weather information from the weather enterprise into systems like your car GPS, on the monitor right in front of you, or on your GPS apps on your phone. Can we use those smart systems that will alert you to speed traps and traffic ahead of you, right? Can we, really get the weather information integrated into those systems so that, you're not relying, the wireless emergency alert is a layer, right, of information and one avenue of getting that information. But, you can imagine, the various apps that are available or your GPS in your car being able to highlight a particularly dangerous, situation is ahead. Great questions. Yeah, I mean, lake effect snow, exactly, Steve. So, the Northeast, especially this time of year where you can get some more of these dynamic, the way I explain a snow squall is it's basically a cold weather, thunderstorm type of event. There's convection, and that convection, can dump a burst of snow. But what's unique is that it could be sunny, right? Just like a thunderstorm, it could be perfectly sunny, and then you come upon a thunderstorm very quickly, and you have heavy rain and lightning and hail and all of that. Same thing with a snow squall. You're not thinking, it's one thing if you're traveling and the weather's bad and you're driving slowly on the roads, and the roads, some places are treated and plowed, others you really got to take your time. On a snow squall, pavement's dry, you're driving at the speed limit, and the sun is shining, and then the next minute visibility is zero and you're losing traction on the road. That's the danger, and that's also the importance of getting those alerts so that you can slow down, you can take these protective actions before actually being in the lion's den there with the snow squall. A great question, great comments. Anyone else? We've touched snow squalls, we've touched lightning, again, all hazards, wildfires. There are safe places to prevent fire, right? And then there's safe places to deal with fire. Making sure that you have various routes if you have to evacuate. You're not just relying on one road in and out, but you can be able to navigate out of danger. Another sneaky hazard coming up here in the spring is cold water. And people say, cold water, what's that all about? So a lot of outdoor activities, right, that are on the water, kayaking, that type of thing. The water's cold. The water's still cold. And, next week here in the Northeast, it's going to get warm. It's going to be in the 70s and the sun's going to be shining. People are going to be wanting to get outside, get on the water. What they're not realizing is if they have an unexpected, capsizing, kayaks, very common with this, where they're not expecting to get wet, but now, they just flip their kayak in, 45, 50-degree water, you could be a great swimmer and have real issues in cold water. You know, the effect it has on your muscles, the effect it has on, you know, trying to, say, escape the kayak itself. We have a lot of deaths because people aren't thinking about the cold water danger, you know. So what's your safe place, right? It's not, don't ever go out in cold water, but, you know, make sure you go out with a buddy. Make sure you, you know, are staying close by, that you can get help. Wear the life jacket. Life jackets, people who wear life jackets aren't people who don't know how to swim. It's people that realize there are dangers and there are situations that go beyond just being able to swim, and cold water is one of those. And then another safe place, again, being liberal with what it means to think about a safe place, is have a plan and tell others, hey, I'm going to be on the water, you know, this afternoon. Make sure people know, and they could react if something happened. All right, so we'll wrap up. Again, Safe Place Selfie is tomorrow, or April 6th if you're watching the recording, maybe even today if you're watching it tomorrow. And I encourage everybody to not just participate and think about their own safe place, but drive others to doing the same. Challenge them, tag them on social media, give them a call, do what you got to do. But your simple actions could save their life. And then also be thinking, you know, knowing your safe place is not a one day a year thought. It's a mindset every single day, whether you are, you know, a local with a local hazard, or you're traveling into an area where you're not familiar. You know, real quick on rip currents, it's not really the locals who get impacted by rip currents at the beach. It's usually the, you know, the family from, I'll pick on Kansas for obvious reasons. I'll pick on Kansas, that, you know, you're traveling to the Gulf of Mexico. You think, all right, you know, the waves aren't that big in the Gulf, we'll be fine. And, you know, the rip current hazard, you know, creates a very bad beach day. We need to be able to be thinking, all right, what's our travel? Where are we going? That's part of the planning in all of this. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time here. Yep, thank you. And again, if you want to learn more about Safe Place Selfie Day, certainly pull up Twitter tomorrow and, you know, check out #SafePlaceSelfie. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining the AMS Weather Band webinar. Have a good day.